From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
So I am delighted to be here with you today to celebrate an amazing writer, Meg Medina. 3 words sum up Meg's book, and they all start with F, but not that F word. Fierce, funny, and fabulous. In her novels and picture books, Meg writes about strong girls in tough situations, and her books are a triumph of the spirit. Critics call Meg's writing heartfelt and truthful. Meg sped into the children's book world with a lively picture book, Tia Isa Wants a Car. This book won the Ezra Jack Keats New Writers Medal in 2012. This auspicious debut was followed by the novels Milagros, Girl from Far Away, and The Girl Who Can Silence the Wind. And she also has a picture book coming out next year, the delicious sounding Mango, Abuela, and Me. Meg's novel, Yaqui Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass, was published last year, and it immediately found a huge following for its wrenching, realistic portrayal of girl bullying. But the main character, Pity Sanchez, is more than a victim. Meg's nuanced writing brings Pity and her larger world to vivid life. The novel won the American Library Association's Belpre Medal and the Cybils Fiction Award, and was included on many, many top 10 and state Reader's Choice lists. Meg herself is just like her books, fierce, funny, and fabulous. When she isn't writing, Meg is busy with community projects that support girls, Latino youth, and/or literacy. These projects all speak deeply to her Cuban-American roots. This year, she was named one of CNN's 10 Visionary Women in America. So please join me in welcoming this fantastic, another F, fantastic author, Meg Medina.
Buenas tardes. I put myself on a ledge this afternoon. I didn't prepare anything written. I just have bulleted lists so that it would force me to just talk to you. I write books for kids of all ages, picture books, middle grade, and young adult. And people ask me about that a lot. Like, how is it that you decide what kind of book you're going to write, or what do you like better about writing picture book or YA, etc. And I always think of another writer who I really admire, Sandra Cisneros, who wrote The House on Mango Street. She also wrote a book called Woman Hollering Creek, and she has an essay in there called 11. And in it, she says that inside of us, no matter what age we are, we're every age we were before also. So inside this person that you're looking at right now, there's 30-year-old Meg, there's 25-year-old Meg, there's 10-year-old Meg, 5-year-old Meg, 12-year-old Meg. They're all in there, and they come out at different times. When I was writing Yaqui Delgado, high school Meg emerged. I'm going to start, I guess, by telling you how I start a book, which is not with an outline, ever. I only ever start with a character and a rough idea of her age. I write about young women because I think young women are amazing. And I love watching young women find their voice and be resilient. So I just follow them around. I start sometimes with an external problem. So I'll say something like, okay, Piedad Sanchez, 17, she lives in Queens. What's the problem? And then I realize maybe she's fallen in love with the wrong person, or her father's died, or she can't stand her mother, or in this case, she's in the crosshairs of a bully. But that's only one tiny problem. Think of your own life. Do your problems come to you one at a time in an orderly fashion? Wouldn't that be nice? No, they heap on when you're least able to hold on to them and sort them out. And so I do that same mean thing to my characters. I heap things on, and as she's solving them, as I'm following her around in the writing, what she reveals to me is what's really bothering her. All of us have those places in our experience that have been painful or embarrassing. Those moments that are so uncomfortable that when we think of them, we do this. Ugh. We push them down. We try not to think about them. Guess what? As a writer, that's where your book is. You have to go into that. You have to roll up your sleeves and really face the things that made you deeply uncomfortable. The times when you disappointed your parents and yourself. The times where people were not there for you, or the times that you were not there for others. And you have to tell that story really honestly. And that's pretty much how the story of Yaqui Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass came about. When I was 13, it's at this point in the life of this book, I've told this story a lot, but when I was 13, someone came up to me in the schoolyard of Junior High School 189 and said to me, "So-and-so is gonna kick your ass." And I said, "Who's that?" I had no idea, but I spent the next 2 years of junior high school really afraid. And what afraid looks like when you're 13, 14, and 15, it looks like a self-attack, because I stopped liking school. I stopped going to school. I started to hang out with people of my age and older who were leading me into ever darker corners. I started to smoke. I started to let boys touch me. I just started to become somebody that would have made my mother's hair stand straight on end. And I survived that and tried to forget that. But years later, when I had the chance to write a story for an anthology about girls at a turning point, guess what memory kept tapping me on the shoulder? It wasn't a good turning point, but life is full of, good turning points and lousy ones. And so I decided that I was going to tell that story. It is a story about bullying, but I hope that it's also a story about more than bullying. I didn't ever sit down and say, bullying is a massive problem in today's schools, and it is, so I think I'll write a book about that. That's not how I approached it. I approached it that I wanted to write this story about Piedad, pity, a girl who finds herself targeted for no reason that she can think of, and I wanted it to be about how she gets herself out of this hole. And the thing that I came to mostly is that her culture, her family, and her sense of self were the only things that could save her. So I thought I'd read you 3 paragraphs from the book. I think that'll be enough to give you a flavor, if you want to hear. This is the point that I'm bringing you in on the book. Somebody's just told her, Yaqui Delgado is going to kick your ass, and she has no idea who this is. Sound familiar? So here it is. We're in the lunchroom now, okay? Is Darlene Jackson, who explains the trouble I'm really in. She's a student aide in the guidance office, and she knows all about Yaqui Delgado. She was suspended last year for fighting. We're in the lunchroom, so Darlene has to shout for me to hear her twice. I've only known Darlene for a few weeks, but already I can tell she loves drama, especially if she has a front row seat and it's somebody else's catastrophe. Her mother is one of those nosy PTA types, too, so Darlene always seems to know whose parents are getting divorced, who failed last semester, what teacher's gonna be fired at the end of the year. Don't ask me how, but that little spy even knew that our science teacher's husband had dumped her. Before Miss O'Donnell got past her swollen eyes to teach us about Newton's laws last week, the whole class knew her love life is in shambles. Darlene pushes up her glasses and tells me the whole rumor. Yaqui Delgado hates you. She says you're stuck up for somebody who just showed up here out of nowhere, and she wants to know who the hell you think you are, shaking your ass the way you do. Darlene lowers her voice. She even called you a skank. Sorry. I'm stunned. I shake my ass? Darlene studies her egg salad sandwich for a second. Definitely, yes. Interesting. I've only had an ass for about 6 months, and now it seems to have a mind of its own. So that's what pity sounds like. That's what she sounded like to me. And so the story is about bullying. It's about this bully who is bullying her for something stupid like you shake your ass, but you could be bullied for everything, right? Anybody who's in high school can tell you that. You can be bullied for being unattractive or for being too attractive, for having no money, for having a lot of money, for being very smart or not very smart. It doesn't matter. What matters is what makes the bully uncomfortable. That becomes the currency. But I wrote a book about a girl at a turning point, and I was writing about culture as well. Because one of the questions that pity has is, who am I as a Latina? She is not your stereotypical Latina, and we have a lot of stereotypes. Look at TV, look at Modern Family. I love that show. I laugh at that show. But if we're talking about representations of Latinos, what do we have? A stereotype, right? The enormously sexy Sofia Vergara, who is just another incarnation of the incredibly sexy Charo of 1970s. Does anybody remember her? She used to go around on the Merv Griffin show going, Gucci, Gucci. Remember her? Okay. All right. So that's kind of a problem, right? We have that stereotype. We have the stereotype of the undocumented person sometimes. We have the stereotype of people with a certain skin tone, with a certain hair color, with a certain sound to their voice. And they're all stereotypes, right? Because Latinos are every kind of race and religion. They come from many, many different countries. And pity is really trying to answer the same question that I had when I was 14. You know, my mother was a really moral lady. She wore just like Ma in this novel. She wore cotton underwear. She wanted me to work hard. She didn't want me to be una cualquiera en la calle, which means some street elf or whatever. But I was wondering when I was a teenager, when I was looking at all the tougher girls in my junior high school, which was a lot like Rita Williams Garcia's junior high school, we're both Latina. Am I Latina enough? What does it mean to be a Latina? And I gave that same question to Piedad. I write Latino families because there's a lot of us, but not in books, as it turns out. I don't know if you can see that I'm wearing the We Need Diverse Books button. If any of you have, yay. If any of you followed that campaign, I urge you to continue to follow We Need Diverse Books and to ask for them at Barnes & Noble, at your indie bookstore, at your library. And please look for books by authors, not in Latino's case, not just during Hispanic Heritage Month, which is now, right? But all year, because really what we're talking about is books that are about the universal experience of growing up, just with another lens. Another thing for you to think about is that I just read in NBC Latino that this is the first year that in American public schools, the students will be a majority of the students will be collectively minority, meaning that if you put all of the minority students together as a block, all of those different ethnicities and so on, we'll have more of them than white students. This is a first time in public education, and what I think is beautiful about that is that it's an opportunity for us to really encourage literature that gets us talking to each other about the American story, that if you just turn around and look at yourselves right now, you can see that we're everything. And we need stories from every point of view to understand each other. As I write, I think the hardest thing in writing for teenagers is writing honestly. And the teens in the audience could probably attest to this. Here's a phrase I particularly love. This is the best time of your life. You have no responsibilities. You should be happy. Wait till you get to be my age, then it'll really be hell. You know, those kinds of things. Okay. So I always think when I hear these things, like, do you not remember what it actually is to be 15 years old and to be 16 years old, to feel so isolated, to be targeted, to be learning about friendships, about love? Do you not remember, in addition to all of the stress that schools and tests and everything else put on kids? So when I write for teens, there's a piece of me, because I have 3 children, they're all in their 20s now. There's this piece that wants to sanitize things. There's this little voice inside me that says, oh, don't let the character do that. That was just such a bad decision. No, she's going to do this other thing instead. Invariably, when I do that, it stinks. Because what matters in a book, especially when you're writing a book for young people, is that you want to honor the people who are reading it. You want them to come to these pages, and in those private moments when they're interacting with the story and they're asking themselves, who am I in this book? What would I do in this situation? Why is this sad? How does this sound like what's happening to me? Like, you want them to feel understood. You want them to feel like there's nothing shameful about the experience of being human and growing up and making a mistake. So that's probably the biggest fight I have inside of myself when I want to sanitize the teens. The other thing on the other side of that is that I try not to flatten out characters into stereotypes. For example, a lot of YA novels, parents are dead or criminally stupid, right? And I think that there are criminally stupid adults in the lives of children sometimes, but I also think that there are wonderful adults in the lives of children sometimes. And we should allow them to be in these books and to exist. I try not to flatten out mean characters into twirling mustache kind of kids. This ultra mean girl or the empty-headed jock, etc. Because the people I know, the teens that I look at are really deeper than that. There is no such thing as the wonderful, completely wonderful person. As anybody knows, you know, it's as easy for the A student teacher's pet to be a bully as the really, you know, typical looking, you know, thug kind of bully. So I try to create characters that are realistic to their experience. So what did I learn in writing Yaqui? I wrote this story sometimes remembering things that I didn't want to remember. I wrote this story sometimes feeling very sad and very ashamed for moments in my own life. And then the book published, and out it went with this title that I'm sure you'll have questions about. I learned that you should never underestimate the power of your lousy experiences in life, people. You can recycle this into amazing joy. I learned that this book offers connection to kids invariably, and it might happen here today. I'll finish speaking and somebody will come over to me and say, Meg, I remember my bully. Her name was Sally Johnson, blah, 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 and she did this to me. And they remember it like into the last detail. Ask yourself this, do you remember somebody who was horrible to you when you were young? You could probably think of the exact moments and the exact things they did. And sometimes when those experiences were very long-lasting and damaging, I could still see on the person's face the pain of that experience. So it's an enormous honor for me that this book gives kids a way to think about themselves, gives kids a way to feel connected and less isolated about their own situation. I learned also to trust my editor, who gave this book the title. I did not have this as the title, I can assure you. I was living with my mother at the time, who was 86 years old, and the thought of saying, Mom, guess what? My new book is called. I just couldn't see it. And I worried for the librarians also. Like, how would they say to their principal, Mr. Johnson, we'd like to invite the author of Yaqui Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass to this. You know, I just thought it would be a problem. And it was, sort of. I did get disinvited to a school in Virginia on the basis of the title. It does happen that sometimes librarians discreetly put the book somewhere where the big glaring title won't offend. But my editor asked me this one question, and it shifted everything for me. She said, how many years have passed since someone said that line to you? And I said, well, I was 13, so you know, it's like 40 years have gone by almost that since someone said that to me. She said, why do you remember it? I said, because it was so aggressive, because it changed everything for several years afterward, because I was frightened. And she looked at me and she said, so Meg, who are you writing this book for? Are you writing this book for the PTA, for the moms, for the librarians, or are you writing this book for the girls who are too afraid to go to the restroom during the school day because their Yaqui Delgado is there? And I wrote for them. So if I'm disinvited, if people feel like the word ass is crass, the book's not for you. The book's for the girls. So, okay. So, señores, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you two things, and then I'm going to open the floor to questions. So if you have questions for me, if you could come to these microphones, that would really help me hear you. If you're in the situation that you're being bullied, right, you might want to check out something called the You Will Rise blogspot. It's a collection of artwork, dance, music, visual arts done by students who have experienced bullying. And on this site, it's just sort of an expression about the experience and how you can sort of rise above it. I found it really moving. I think art is an amazing untapped source. So if you can, I'd go there. And the other place is the PACER Anti-Bullying Foundation. They have documents, they have strategies, they list your rights, they have all kinds of helpful information for you to really combat this in your own life. What I would say to anybody who's in the crosshairs of a bully right now is that silence really isn't your friend on this one. And as frightening as it is to confide something that feels embarrassing, I really urge you to do so. It doesn't have to be your parent. It doesn't have to be the school dean. But there's someone, some adult, some friend, some parent of a friend who can help you. Please speak up. Okay, preguntas, questions. Hi.
Can you? Oh, there you go. Since we're in Washington, D.C., I figured this is the best place to ask. What are your thoughts on Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor and her wise Latina description of herself? I think that some people probably made some remarks about it, but just wanted to get your perspective on her choice of words.
You're going to have to forgive me. Say that again, but slower and louder for me.
Sure. Since we're in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
I figured this would be the best place to ask about Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor and her choice of her description is as a wise Latina. Some people made some remarks about her choice of words, and I wanted to know what yours are about her self-description.
About Sonia Sotomayor and the wise Latina?
Yes.
First of all, I feel really connected to Sonia Sotomayor because she struggles with her Espanol sometimes, okay? So I was born here, my family was born in, everybody was born in Cuba, even my husband was born in Cuba, Javier, who's here. And my mother was always worried that I would say what we say in Spanish, un disparate, right? That means like you translate something in some crazy, stupid way and you sound completely ignorant and not like the fine person you're supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I heard Sonia Sotomayor on Jorge Ramos's show, and she was struggling with some stuff just the way I was. And so I was like, if Sonia Sotomayor has this problem, I'm okay too. I think she is a wise Latina. I love that she's here in my time as a Supreme Court Justice, as a counterbalance for the face of all types of Latinas, all different ways of being a Latina. Sure, you can be sexy, you can be J-Lo. Sure, you can write a book. Sure, you can be the Supreme Court Justice. I adore her. I think she's wonderful.
So this is more of a comment. I'm a middle school librarian, and the year before Yaqui came out, the same situation happened at my school, where a new girl came in, said that she was looking at another girl's boyfriend, got beaten up for it. So the next year when Yaqui came out, I was so glad to be able to buy 5 copies, book talk them in the class where this girl's friends were. I didn't see those books for the next 3 months because they all passed them around. So I want to thank you for writing books that my kids could see themselves in.
Oh.
And if you ever get a cancellation, please come to my middle school. We'd love to have you.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that comment, because when you're disinvited, even though I thought it was a silly reason to disinvite me, the word ass, I mean, really, let's just talk about this for a second. What bully just stops at saying, I'm going to kick your ass? It's really a much more colorful description of what's going to happen to you. So I thought it was a silly thing, but it was still embarrassing to me, because it felt like what they were saying and what they actually did say is that I didn't reflect the moral standards of the community, and that in some way what I had produced was harmful to children. I'm a mother. I was a teacher for many years. I write for children. Children have been at the center of my life always. And so it was a very painful experience for me. It ended up working out because it got, well, the book more press, but still, it was embarrassing. So thank you very much for letting me know. I really appreciate it. Yes?
Okay. First of all, thank you for a terrific talk. It was really illuminating in many ways. I'm really glad that you raised the diverse book movement, and I think that's really important. Along with that discussion, though, there's been some speculation about whether writers should try to write outside of their culture. And I was wondering what your thoughts are about this.
You know, it's such a slippery slope, isn't it? And I think Jean did a great job yesterday at Jean Luen Yang last night at the gala. He was saying to us that in the first draft, you're allowed to have your misconceptions, your stereotypes, and so on. But what he doesn't want to do is, quote unquote, forbid people outside of a particular ethnic group from writing that ethnic group. That's not a deal breaker for me. Laura Rousseau, who wrote The Queen of Water, I think is an excellent example of a woman who isn't Latina writing really powerfully about a Latina experience. I think it requires tact, it requires research, it requires respect. And the respect is that you offer this to beta readers, to people who read and give you response, so that you are getting it right. You know, I can't sit here and say that I recommend years and years of research, although that would be great, but it does require extra work on your part. Please don't just slap on a name like Maria and throw a piñata and a few beans in there and say, we're good to go. You know, like, it's deeper, it's deeper. And that's what you want to get right, the nuance and the universality of the experience.
Thank you.
So I actually, unfortunately, had never heard of your book until today. Your title was what caught my attention, and so that's why I'm here, and I'm going to read it, even though I'm not a teenager. But my question to you is, any idea what happened to Yaqui Delgado in your life?
Oh, you know what? I've had fantasies.
Yeah.
And they all include prison.
And I think that as teenagers, we probably all have one story of some type of bullying. Yeah. And personally, I would just like to know where they're at in their life now. And I don't say it in a way to like go back and say it, rub it in their face, look where I'm at now.
Right.
But it just, I've always thought, where are all these bullies?
I know.
That were bullying us as teenagers. So just wondering if you know where Yaqui's at.
I don't know what happened to my Yaqui Delgado, but as I said, I have fantasies. And as a writer, the beautiful part is that I have this weapon, right? I can make anything happen to anybody I want to. So that's sort of cathartic. The truth is that sometimes bullies have qualities that will serve them well in life. They're charismatic sometimes. They're able to get people to do what they want. So think business leaders, think, you know, there are some places where some of the characteristics of an assertive person are powerful ones and good ones. The real question is, can we help kids develop conscience? Can we help kids develop empathy? Can we help them develop restraint so that they have that pause between what they want to say in that moment and how it's going to land? Because honestly, I wonder if the girl who came up to me in the schoolyard had any idea that those 5 words or whatever would change my life the way they did.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're on overtime, right? Do I have time for one more question? I'm so sorry, but I'll be here if you want to ask me, and we can talk then. Muchísimas gracias. It was so fun to be with you today.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.